this win. The replay of race 7, and then we go to race 8.
To let them go. They stand in a good line. Gates go back. They're often racing from that 1600-meter marker. By design, Gold Poker Game has been dropped out for its run. First to land running well. Where's Red Palace? She's on speed. I'm not quite sure she'll get to the front, though. Right up there.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this morning after. Seth, Merrow in the studio on a Sunday morning. Thanks for joining us. Let me start out by thanking our friends up at Woodbine. Jumped on for their annual sponsorship. Track opened last week, and always like Woodbine with the turf racing. We'll be up later this year, September, for some live on the scene action at Woodbine. But again, Woodbine, pick, bet, and shear, great racing north of the border. Thanks again to our friends up at Woodbine. But this morning, all eyes on a big weekend down at Churchill Downs, Friday Oaks Day, Saturday Derby Day. Great action both days. And who better to follow up with than the boots on the ground? He was there doing the radio show for a couple of weeks and again doing a great job. And he's live at Churchill this morning. If you followed his Twitter feed, he was out at the Kenny McPeak barn dropping in some videos and some pictures. Our friend Steve Byk. Steve, good morning.
Seth, good morning. Good morning, Capital District and everybody else.
Before we get to specific races, I wanted to just do a little overview and talk about the lead up in a couple of weeks. And, you know, you've been down there. The weather was a little dicey early on Friday, but kind of cleared up yesterday. It was fine. Talk about the crowds, talk about the new facility, and just a little overview of Derby week and weekend.
Dicey is a very delicate way of putting Friday. It was awful. It was horrific. It was way worse than any prediction offered going into Friday. I mean, we were prepared for some rain. We were not prepared for rain all day long and into the night. Interestingly, the turf course, which is much maligned and continues to be a bit of an irksome problem for Churchill, it actually weathered it very well. Of course, the main track dries like no other in the game. And, basically by, I don't know, maybe the third race, maybe by the time that Mindframe ran, you had a Merrow track that they were calling good, but was basically fast with some moisture in it. And then, of course, by midday, you had a fast track. I mean, it's a remarkably well-draining main track. But on Friday, I mean, it was a sea of slop, and it was tough, and it was gonna compromise certain horses. It's just the way it is, and everybody's prepared for that. And I'm sure we'll talk about the Oaks second, so we'll get to it, and I won't dive into what is in some ways the most improbable story that you could have had over the weekend. I suppose the only thing more improbable than a McPeak sweep might have been I suppose a Wayne Lucas sweep. That might have been even the crazier story. But anyway, what was interesting about the week, Seth, was that more or less going into opening on Saturday night a week ago, the Derby was less the story than the new building.
Yeah. And
the excitement and the anticipation of how the new paddock was going to play. And there'll be some familiarity, I guess, some time for people to get used to it. Visually, it's stunning. I mean, it looks fabulous in terms of practicality, and I don't know if it was more a question of people just not used to the traffic flow, or what is going to be now permanent change in the traffic flow. Basically in that area. But there was some congestion issues that had kind of been alleviated in prior years by the way the building had been reconfigured. I think they've got some ideas about moving the gates, moving them out and opening things up a little bit. There was some real congestion. Friday a little, and then Saturday a lot. We were back to a situation where it was difficult to move from one side of the building, from the grandstand side to the clubhouse side. But in terms of putting people in the building and maximizing the opportunity, they've done it again. With the gigantic crowd and record handle. I mean, all the things that they've done for this week. Going back to Tuesday, the 5-0 Tuesday, the Louisville Day, and then the Champions Day, then Derby. And then Oaks and Derby. I mean, the business that they've been able to maximize out of this week is really stunning. And I know that people think that Churchill is mercenary. They're a publicly traded corporation. They've got shareholders, and that's their job, and that's their mission. So the racing is not secondary at all. I know people think that. And Churchill has been, there's things you can criticize them about, but what they've done to that building and to this week is just a stunning success. So that's the backdrop. And, after that, it's a question of, two really spectacular days of racing. Yeah. Thursday actually was a very good day of racing as well. So, the weather didn't dampen any spirits. You had everything that this event is basically is known for. The signature, everything that goes with it was in place, and there remains nothing like it. I know people seem eager to critique every element, but you're certainly not going to get that from me.
Yeah, and. It's just you sit back and you look, and that new paddock on television just looked spectacular. And yeah, it was two really, really good days of racing, and we'll get to some of that. But you sent some photos as well, and I wanted to go through a few of those. First, the media people, always a great job from the NBC team. Randy, Jerry, and Nick Luck. And he also had a shot with Donna Brothers, who did her usual good job out on the track. And then you had a shot with one of the up-and-coming analysts, Andy Biancone. And that looked like you guys were on a panel. Am I correct? You had some kind of handicapping panel maybe last week?
On Monday,
okay.
Second Stride, the Second Stride, which is the only aftercare fundraiser in Louisville Derby week. And I've done it I've done it for quite a while now. I've probably done 6 or 7 over the last 10 years. And they had a new venue, the Manhattan Project, and a lot of fun. Me and Byron King and Andy and Doug Nackman from St. Louis. And I've not talked to Doug yet, but I think I know he liked Mystic Dan coming in and thought that Mystic Dan was kind of dirtied up and people were confused about him. So, I mean, we'll talk about it, obviously, but that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed being part of that.
And just before we get to the races, one last shot. Derby Day, known for the fashion and whatnot. You had a shot. And I said to you when I first looked at it, I thought this guy had a stuffed dog. But no, it's a real dog. And where did this guy show up?
I have no idea. This was after. Was this after Oaks? No, this was after Derby yesterday. I was coming back. I actually had a very funny segment on Sirius at about 7:30 from the paddock, and yeah, that's when it was. So I was coming back to the media center, and I came around the corner, and then here's this guy, and at first I thought it was a stuffed dog too. And then I realized, wait a minute, this poor thing. And I don't know if you can blow it up because the dog, I don't know if it's a Pomeranian or whatever it is. It's got those, it's got that thing, kind of face on him. It's hysterical. I mean, everybody was taking pictures of him, so I jumped in too. And the guy in the background that's got his back, he's turning back and looking like, what the hell is this?
Very good. Well, that's Derby Day down in Louisville. All right, let's get to it because there was a lot of great action. We're going to show the entire Kentucky Derby here. And yeah, you alluded to it, or I think you essentially mentioned it. What a weekend for Brian Hernandez and Ken McPeak. Brian Hernandez gets applause for a couple of great rides, and Mystic Dan is going to be the number 3 horse, and watch him cut the corner here as they get to the top of the stretch. Mystic Dan at 18-1 gets it done, right behind number 2 Sierra Leone. Forever Young, the Japanese horse, runs very well, and these two kind of ding dong and bump a little bit late, but wind up second and third in as close a photo as you can get, a nose and a nose, first to second, second to third. Catching Freedom runs fourth. One of the other stories, and you'll see Fierceness get out and vie for the lead. One of the stories, obviously, is the dud that he kind of winds up tossing in. After the win in the Southwest with the triple-digit buyer. And I wondered coming into the Arkansas Derby, could he validate that? Well, he didn't, running third, and the buyer went back significantly, but he had trouble there. And given all of that, I used him as a little bit of a backup yesterday. I wish I had been a little more confident, but the backup was okay to me. But again, it was a great ride and a great weekend for both the jock and the trainer. We'll get to their win on Friday in the Oaks, but give us your impressions of the Derby.
Well, obviously, this is a pretty fascinating and a very involved version of this race. We've gone all this way and have not mentioned Fierceness. And you look at this chart, and we probably should have done a screen cap of the chart, but this has got all the earmarks of a collapse event. And that shouldn't surprise anybody. I actually thought maybe that we would get a version of this where the horses that were sort of mid-pack stalkers, basically I was kind of looking for horses that were going to be, let's say, 5th through 15th. I thought maybe the first run stalker pressers would get the majority of the superfecta slot. But it does turn out that other than Mystic Dan, you've got 4 horses, 4.5 horses that were, I'll give this to you, let's say at the half mile. Sierra Leone was 17th, Forever Young was 16th, Catching Freedom was 13th, and Tio Password was 18th. When you see that, that's a race that is essentially displaying itself as a collapse. And what's interesting is that the splits, 22 and 4, 46 and 3, that's a moderately fast half mile for the Derby. It's an honest, fast Derby half mile. Mystic Dan strategically had been committed by Brian Hernandez to taking advantage of the 3-hole and getting a ground-saving, rail-skimming type of trip. Their expectation was, with Dornick, it's expected to, set a fast opening fraction. With Sierra Leone in the 2-hole next to him and Catching Freedom to his outside, essentially you had a scenario where Mystic Dan was going to be able to follow Dornick. But instead, what transpired was Dornick misses the break essentially, just a touch, also gets a kind of a tangled start and is nowhere to be found. You did get Track Phantom to essentially, add to the pace but that was out in, the 11 hole. So Brian Hernandez Jr. gets a dream scenario where he can set up shop unencumbered without having to use Mystic Dan, too much to gain position. He does gain position, and essentially he saw West Saratoga and followed him. And that set him up beautifully. And from there, it was, what people are, I think people are fairly calling it a dream trip, but at the same time, you don't get a dream trip if you don't have a horse that can put himself in the position for a dream trip. I mean, people say, "Oh, he got a dream trip," in an insulting fashion. Okay, that was like when they said, "Oh, funny side, oh, he got a dream trip." Yeah, because he was fast enough to be in position when turning for home. The same thing is true here. Here with Mystic Dan, people are going to appreciate this ride, not just Brian's outstanding positional ability, which is what his hallmark is. Jay Pribman, for 15 years, Jay Pribman has been telling everybody that Brian Hernandez Jr. is probably the best positional rider since Jerry Bailey. And at the same time, partnered with Mystic Dan, and this is the story of him and Kenny McPeak and their relationship. This is a horse that made 3 moves. And horsemen will tell you, most horses, any horse will give you 1 run for for a quarter of a mile or for 3/8. A good horse will give you a couple of runs at different places in a race. A really good horse and a great horse will give you 3 moves. And that's what this horse did. And if you keep watching the replay and just watch nothing but Mystic Dan, you'll see that he has to idle and idle and idle and basically, maintain position. And you'll see that he moves up very carefully. The first move is to gain the early position down the stretch the first time. The second move is into the turn where he basically puts himself in position to grab the rail and go for the lead when Track Phantom starts to tire and gives maybe a half pass. And boom, Mystic Dan moves into that slot and then grabs that lead. And Brian, brilliantly at that point moves out to what? Like a 3.5, 4-length lead for maybe a 16th of a mile. And that's exactly what he needed by the time they get to the finish. And here's Sierra Leone and Forever Young bearing down on him. And of course, there's a whole separate discussion to have about the incident between Sierra Leone and Forever Young. That includes the question, how could there not be an inquiry? Sorry. I mean, there's all that bumping going on. And the two of them are separated by basically the Sierra Leone's muzzle at the finish. There's a story to be discussed about Sierra Leone's lugging in and how it's costing him, it very well may have cost him this race. But at the same time, Forever Young contributes to it. And I'm sure if we reach out to Barbara Borden and talk to the stewards, they're going to say, first of all, neither jock, Sakai did not claim foul. So, he was satisfied seemingly. But that incident is going to be carefully examined. I don't think that Tyler Gaffleone was doing anything wrong. I think his arm kind of, he was going left-handed to try to keep Sierra Leone straight. This lugging in, you can see that he's pulling on the right rein and he's trying to hit him left-handed, to keep him from laying on Forever Young. So there's a lot of that going on. But in the meantime, Mystic Dan does exactly enough to win this race. And I know that if people waited out the photo, it was pretty clear at the wire that Mystic Dan had won. And then when you saw Greg Blasi pick up Mystic Dan and Brian Hernandez, and you also saw that Donna Brothers got to Brian on her pony, it was pretty clear that he had won. The outrider knows, and Brian, knew. But then when they did slow it down, you couldn't exactly be sure. The wire is sort of a good, probably a good foot ahead of the big stanchion that says finish. So that's a little confusing. Plus the camera angles are bad. So I know some people were, flummoxed about the photo and the finish, but it was pretty obvious that Mystic Dan had gotten there first. There's a lot of horses down the chart whose race was over literally 2 jumps, not even one jump out of the gate. Honor Marie got absolutely pounded on both sides, and Ben Curtis lost an iron. And yet he was still able to, work out a trip that got him up to 8. There was all kinds of banging around that is going to be examined. We saw Danny Gargan last night at 11 o'clock. Mike Welsh and myself and Dave Brenning and Christina Basanakis, we finally got out of there and finally found something to eat at the Post, which is a pretty fun pizza joint. And there was Danny Gargan. Danny is going to point to the Belmont with Dornick. His race was over, a jump into the race. There's going to be a lot of stories. Fierceness was not good. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about his. Just the touch was dreadful. I mean, that was shocking how bad he was. Stronghold ran very well from that outside post to try to stalk and get involved. Resilience came looming up on the turn, and in fact, I saw Bill Mott was the first when I came off the infield and came back to the paddock. Bill was watching the replay, and I said, "Phil, you ran great." And he said, "Boy, I thought we were going to get up there and be involved." That's another good performance. There's a lot going on. Obviously, the 2 Japanese runners, for starters, Forever Young, he was a maniac in the paddock. Theo Password, the 2 of them were skittish all week and were intimidated by the building, I think. But Theo Password ran very well in an entirely different style than was anticipated. After his stablemate, Theo Saint-Denis, had that runoff performance in the Ali Sheba, the idea, I think people thought that Theo Password would try the same thing. Instead, he was like 18th early. So a lot, as always, you look at this Derby and you have to watch it 10 times. And I suggest if you want to watch it and hear a call that actually tells you what really was going on, watch the call on the Kentucky Derby Twitter feed of Travis Stone, who called yet another brilliant Kentucky Derby. And of course, he should be doing it for the worldwide audience as well. Just a brilliant job by Travis. So anyway, this was it may not have been a lucrative Derby for everybody, but it was, for the 150th and for everything that went into it from a marketing standpoint for Churchill, it could not have been more thrilling to have nearly 3 noses on the wire. Points to Chad Brown, who was so gracious and just so magnanimous about getting beat in a second Derby by the narrowest of margins. And Sierra Leone is going to have a big second half of the year. Really, from every vantage point, this was very, very satisfying. And of course, no more so than for Brian Hernandez Jr. and for Kenny McPhee.
Yeah, and let me hit on a few things there. First, you just mentioned Brian Hernandez. So as you were talking and mentioning folks who had talked about him, it was I don't know how many years ago we were doing a little little fairgrounds handicapping with Dick Powell at some point within the last few years, and he had brought up Brian Hernandez then, and from that point on, I had kind of watched Brian Hernandez and give him a little extra when he's on board a horse. Fierceness, he was out there with the pace, but boy, he gave it up earlier than you would expect from a really special horse. So we'll see going forward. Again, he defined himself as an enigma yesterday more than anything, I think. The bumping incident, that got the buzz on social media yesterday, and so I was looking. They probably should have taken a look, given what happened. There were some pictures of Tyler Gaffleone with his hand over kind of towards the other horse, another jock. Jay Privman said he took a look. And I haven't looked at it in that granular fashion yet, but he said maybe the whip got stuck in the other horse's reins, and it wasn't really Tyler going over and kind of trying to touch or push.
That's exactly what it was.
And so
that's exactly what.
And looking at the head-on for me, like I say, I think they should have looked. I don't know whether I would have changed anything up. It was kind of a 50-50 situation, but there was something going on that was worth maybe a little bit of a look. Beyer was 100, according to the follow-up article in the Racing Form. So he hits a triple-digit Beyer. And I'll touch on one other thing. A lot of folks on social media said, Sierra Leone was the best horse, or Forever Young was best, and they had to come from the back and use up more ground than the winner. But you mentioned that half-mile mark. The horses, as you said, that finished second, third, fourth, and fifth, they were 16th, 15th, 13th, and 18th. Mystic Dan was fourth by less than a length, or about a length. He was sitting fourth. The horses who were first, second, third, and fifth wound up 11th, 14th, 15th, and 17th. So, I don't know that it will wound up that close, and with Mystic Dan getting a very nice trip, admittedly, but I don't know whether you can take anything away from him, given, again, that the horses just behind came from way back while he was right up on that pace early. And so it was a very, very nice performance, certainly, from Mystic Dan. And we're going to pull up a couple more shots you had. You were over at the barn this morning, and I was laughing when I talked to you before we went on the air. You got a shot of both Brian Hernandez and Kenny McPeek with the belt, which you said I wasn't sure, but has become a thing.
Yeah, the WWE, that's in part thanks to Kevin Kirstein and John Nichols and Alex Foley. There's a whole coterie of Churchill denizens that go not just the WWE. They go to those local, the small roving,
like the local high school gym.
Yeah, exactly. Like at the VFW hall wrestling event, like you saw in the Mickey Rourke movie, The Wrestler. They go to those. They love it, and they've gotten the WWE involved. And look, if it has some crossover and WWE wants to promote. That'd be okay. It's not for me, but it's awfully popular out there. So anyway, that's become a thing. The presenting, they not only do they have the belt for everybody, but they've also got one that's a halter for the horse.
That's great. Yeah, we're showing McPeak there. And again, Brian Hernandez had the belt as well. All right. Speaking of McPeak and Brian Hernandez, let's go back and we'll take a look at Friday. Friday, to me, Saturday was great. There were great races and really nice performances. But boy, on Friday, there was just some knockout performances. We're going to look at Torpedo Anna, but I thought Idiomatic was really good in her follow-up, her seasonal debut. Looked like she might get swallowed up. Overcharged was, I thought, very impressive first mission, but we're looking at them coming out of the gate here in the Kentucky Oaks, and Torpedo Anna. I said it, and I probably told you this before. I had Ken McPeak on the closing weekend at Fairgrounds. He had a bunch of stakes runners down at the Fairgrounds and up at Turfway, and we talked about those, and then the interview ended, and I was talking to him, hey, thanks for coming on, blah, blah, blah. He said, we didn't talk about Torpedo Anna, who I have in the fantasy next week. She is really good, and subsequently she wins the fantasy off of that. I used her on Friday. I was very happy with the $10 and change mutual, but she was phenomenal on the front end. Just FYI, I thought acquitted herself very nicely. She's the 13 and winds up second. Regulatory Risk and Ways and Means third and fourth. But again, this was really one of the big performances on the weekend from Torpedo Anna. Your thoughts in the Oaks?
Well, my thoughts on the Oaks, much like last year, where Pretty Mischievous was absolutely just the best physically the 2 weeks that we were here. The two best, really, the two best, essentially, the two best fillies from a physical standpoint, not just workouts, but also galloping every day. They run 1-2. And anybody that listens to the show, knows that we stressed Torpedo Anna and flogged her on a daily basis. She just, and frankly, Mystic Dan, I kind of botched it because I said how high energy he was, for the whole 2 weeks, and then he was even more focused the last week than he was the week before, and then I kind of just, glossed over him when it came to the selections and the ticket building. But I didn't with Torpedo Anna. I keyed off of her, picked her, and stressed her. And, her and Jess FYI, they were so much the best. But Torpedo Anna, the way she dominated this race, and Kenny, let's talk about this right now, because I didn't discuss it coming out of our chat on the Derby. I'm going to list Mystic Dan as doubtful for the Preakness.
Okay.
They gave every indication this morning that they will wait for the Belmont. You can just tell. Kenny also he's got PPs. He ran Mystic Dan on 2 weeks rep, and he was dismal. He left 3 quarts of oats in his tub last night. So he was knocked out by this effort. Make no mistake. And it feels like the filly was a little less taxed than Mystic Dan was. So the indication from 2 hours ago at the barn was that you won't see Mystic Dan in the Preakness, which is obviously going to be problematic. The Japanese have gone home already. So right now you got Moose and anybody else that Baffert might run. And I would imagine that Lucas will run maybe just Steele, who was 17th, and another horse that attended the pace and ended up at the back of the pack.
He also, I think, said Seize the Gray may go to the Preakness.
Seize the Gray. It got an 88 buyer, and it would be beaten 14 lengths in the Preakness if he goes. Although it's back to two. I don't know. Back to 2 turns. It was a nice win for Seize the Gray, and they've got that My Racehorse, which I suppose they'll push to run him in the Preakness. But 88, an 88 fig for him. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see about it. But the other thing that Kenny talked about with Torpedo Anna, their long-term goal is the Alabama. It's a very interesting situation that he's in. He doesn't want the 2 horses running in the same race, as much as Kenny would like to run against Boys and isn't afraid of that at all. She would have to be supplemented to the Preakness for $200,000. I don't think they're doing that. She could be supplemented to the Belmont actually for just $50,000. So there's some interesting discussions that are going to go on coming out of Friday and Saturday when it comes to the McPeak barn. But Torpedo Anna just spectacular. That was quite something.
Yeah. Also worth mentioning, picked her up at auction for $40,000. Nice buy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and Kenny's responsible. Mystic Dan is a homebred by the Gassaways, and that they are not husband and wife, by the way. They're related by their marriage. So even though it's the same name, the dam. Kenny bought the dam, who was bred actually by Ted Bassett. I think he's like 100 now, or 101 maybe. Ted Bassett, right? He's still alive.
Yeah.
But Kenny picked out the dam. So even though this is a homebred, Kenny is responsible, and he's the one who made it. He was responsible for the mating with Golden Fence. So Kenny, once again, listen, McPeak, when it comes to this, he's got one of the greatest eyes there is, and he really exercised some demons. He's brought some good horses over, particularly for the Oaks. The Take Charge Lady, and in fact, I'm sure we'll talk about it with him tomorrow. You go back when he had Harlan's Holiday and Take Charge Lady going into the Oaks and Derby as favorites. And so, he ran second with the Hano Run. Kenny McPeak was one of those guys who figured to win an Oaks or a Derby along the way, and he got it done in 24 hours.
Yeah, and I think I read the third to do this, although it had been done 4 times, I think. One of the trainers, but it hadn't been done since maybe the 50s. Brian Hernandez gets himself in a select club as well, winning the Derby and the Oaks in the same year. It was a phenomenal weekend overall, but certainly for those two guys. Let's take a look at some of the other action. The race just before. This is where I made my money on Mystic Dan, because I just couldn't let him get away at a price. And so coming into the 11th race, the Turf Classic, I played some doubles with Mystic Dan, and getting it done in here. It's the other Chad, program trading for Chad Brown and Seth Klarman, program trading under Flavian Prat, Naval Power second, Web Slinger third, Integration runs fourth, but paying $10 and change. Program trading. Thoughts in the Turf Classic?
My thoughts are that not only in this race, and okay, Godolphin did win the 2,000 guineas earlier in the day, but Godolphin and Charlie Appleby, at least we don't have to listen to that nonsense. They got their heads handed to them yesterday in New York and in Kentucky. It was, as I said to a few people loudly, how about them Applebee's? There was no joy in Godolphinville yesterday.
We didn't have the New York race, but that was kind of that horse looked. I didn't yesterday in this race. I wasn't as enamored with theirs, but the horse in New York, and then gets upset with the Dylan Davis ridden horse in New York. But let's move to the race just prior, the Churchill Downs, and you and I were in the same boat. If I'm not mistaken, I looked at your webpage yesterday, and I think it was in caps, which I'm assuming is a best bet, Gun Pilot. I like Gun Pilot as well. Was coming out of a second place finish in a stake down at Oaklawn. I always like Oaklawn shippers this time of year. And at $12 and change, it'll be number 10 Gun Pilot. Hear My Song second. Zozos runs third. But good call in the Churchill Downs.
You know what's funny about that? He was the best bet for me on the Saturday card. And hit the best bet on Friday too. But it was a very confusing race. I thought I all week long I called it what I felt was the toughest race of the day. Gun Pilot was sort of hidden a little bit coming into it. And certainly Thorograph users, I imagine, caught on to him because he had gotten down to a 1, 2 back, and then ran a half, ran a 0 and change in his last. And it felt like this was a coming out party. When you're looking at these gun runners, remember what Gun Runner did in his own career. He was very good at 3. He was spectacular with another year of development. So keep that in mind. And Gun Pilot, I figured would get a nice trip behind the speed, the open air outside box, the Marty McGee where the air is fresh and clear. And that's exactly what you got. And Christian Torres, you talk about Brian Hernandez. Christian Torres is sort of the Brian Hernandez 2.0. He's got a lot of the same qualities. He knows where to put horses. And I like Torres. Gun Pilot got bet. I mean, we ended up at 1268 for a mutual. Happy for Billy Stinson, too, who finished second. There's a lot of horses that hit the board over the weekend that need to be acknowledged. The horses like Free Like a Girl. That was unbelievable for Cassie Pommier, for her to, in the La Troyenne, for her to run second. Unbelievable success. She's now had 2 placements, third in the Apple Blossom and second in the La Troyenne, the Louisiana bred. Then you mentioned Overcharge. We'll get to her. How about her? She's just a, as they say on around the racetrack, a run and pitch. She's unbelievable. I'm glad we're having time to do this because there were so many fun efforts.
And I do want to get to some of those Friday races, so I'll just ask, you have any thoughts? We can pull up replays on some of these Saturday races if you want to make a comment. But in the American,
you got to get to 2 things. You got to get to Vava, Cherie DeVaux, and Vava turns the table on her arch rival, Alva Star, another Louisiana bred, Brett Brinkman. Of course, we're plenty familiar with her and that family, the sister of Scylla. Brett Brinkman comes up and robs robs the Saratoga Stakes schedule with alacrity. But Vava, Cherie gets a big Grade 1 win with a 4-year-old gun runner filly. Very notable. And how about Tricari? I went back and looked afterward, in fact, this morning. I was nauseous. I'll tell you, this really hurt because I liked Formidable Man and Lagniot and used them both. And I went back and I realized that Tricari was very competitive and absolute on figures, ran a 9 in that Rushaway win, and I was like, how did I miss this horse? Because everybody was cooing over Lord Bullington, who absolutely stunk. I just unbelievable. I really was. I bet that race wrong, and that actually started a bit of a skid. No, not that ended a skid because I didn't use Chili Flag in the turf mile. I said that the race went through the Chad Brown horses, and then I left Chili Flag off, and I seized the gray. I didn't like at all, but anyway, that's the majority. Cogburn, how about Cogburn's performance for the Highling Broths and Clark Brewster? I said on Friday, Clark Brewster, given what's going on in that courtroom in New York, Stormy Daniels' attorney, Clark Brewster, deserved a win and some time on camera, and he got it.
Yeah, I totally agree on just about everything you said there. Tricari was one of those I didn't use, but I looked afterwards, and it was one of those horses that if you looked at the record and looked up at the board and saw the price, it was worth playing around with. The Graham Motion runner. Vava was very good. They interviewed Cherie DeVaux on the simulcast signal afterwards, and obviously she was very, very happy with a Grade 1 win on Derby Day down at Churchill. And Cogburn was a horse I liked yesterday as well. Helped what was a pretty good day over on the one sheet yesterday at Churchill. All right, let's go back and take a look at some of the action on Friday because certainly, as you said, there was some...
Whoa.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Pull up, Trigger.
Go ahead.
You had 2 allowance races that have big implications.
Yeah.
You think I'm going to talk about mind frame, but forget mind frame. The horse to talk about is Raging Torrent, the horse of Doug O'Neill in the race after the Derby. He absolutely blew that race apart. He basically shrugged off the Michael McCarthy runner Yellow Card, who really had impressed in the mornings leading into the weekend. Raging Torrent, a 104 buyer, look for him in the Woody Stevens, where he's going to go favored.
Yeah,
How about that?
And you mentioned Mindframe. He looked really good earlier in the day. And Scylla got back on track as well on the undercard. So, again, besides the stakes racing. And I said the last couple of days, we will see performances over the next couple of days that will play in Saratoga. And maybe not Saratoga traditionally only, but I think some of these performances will show up, as you say, Woody Stevens, Belmont at Saratoga weekend as well.
Yeah, very much. I mean, very much.
All right, now let's go back to Friday, and I'm just taking. Why don't we take a look at the Ali Sheba and take a look at First Mission, who tossed in the clunker in the Pegasus and now has rebounded nicely. And I think off of the last two performances, the last two wins, including the one Friday in the Ali Sheba, I think First Mission places himself firmly in the discussion of the handicap horses this year. Your thoughts with First Mission on Friday in the Ali Sheba?
Well, I mean, this was anticipated. I mean, it was that he was going to be, that he would be prominent as a 4-year-old, and he had to go get this horse. This
absolutely
had gone out and done that crazy gambit that you see that more in turf races than you do in dirt races, and that can be hard sometimes to go reel in a horse like that. But that was a good job by Florent Giroux to recognize the situation and go and move when he did. And then by the time he corralled him, he pretty much moved away. Il Miracolo and Steel Sunshine coming up from Gulfstream, they just Il Miracolo just missed second, trying to get past the other Japanese runner. So the three Japanese runners finish second, third, and fourth in their spots.
Yeah, and I would think the Friday effort pulled a little value out of the two Saturday. I was surprised, actually, the odds of Forever Young went off at 7-1. I thought,
why? What else? What did you expect him to be?
Well, I wasn't thinking. I was thinking he could edge into single digits, but I thought he would just barely edge in. I thought 9-1 might be his bottom window. So when he wound up a couple points lower than that, I'm not saying he would have been 20-1 or anything. I just thought he was a couple points lower than I thought. All right, let's go back and watch. One of the we've already kind of talked about it a little bit or alluded to it in the Unbridled Sydney, overcharged Louisiana bred. I mean, she goes out and then gets past, and you think it's over for her, and then she comes back. Overcharged is going to be the number 2 horse here, with just an absolutely spectacular performance. And again, one of the really nice ones of the weekend. Your thoughts, Overcharged in the Unbridled Sydney?
Well, I'm a big fan of hers. And, the Louisiana bred program, maybe they start with an advantage because, this is Ms. Evelyn Benoit, as they call her down there, Miss Evelyn, and, Star Guitar, who gets his share, Britland Stables, of course, and Shane Wilson, who has risen to prominence with Britland. This is just a incredibly fast filly. She just runs them off their feet. What else can you say? Now, as it happens, they were gunning at her. That nice secret money of Brendan Walsh's. And who had a very sneaky, quiet, very quietly good weekend was Mark Cassey.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about the strong qualities, nice performance in the Knicks Go, but he also had that Theo de Ariana was a very good second as well. Cassey had a quietly good couple of days. But anyway, Overcharged. She had a pace advantage. It looked like she was, going to be difficult to reel in, and she was.
And you mentioned Shane Wilson. Worth just reiterating for folks who weren't paying attention this winter. He'll be one to watch. He had that Fairgrounds meet of his from the get-go to the end. He led it all the way and had a great meet down there at the Fairgrounds and gets it done in that Unbridled Sydney as well. Let's take a look, because you mentioned you kind of tossed out the New York bred catchphrase, and it just wanted to also mention My Main Squeeze in the 8 bells, because nice little New York bred for Mike Maker in here, and gets it done. The number 11 horse, as we watch the replay, Luis Saez on board, winds up 2 lengths to the good and pays $15 and change. And as I say, started the career, the first 6 starts of the career were against New York State breds, then tried the fantasy down at Oaklawn and was a little bit disappointing there, but rebounded nicely on Friday in the 8 bells. What were your thoughts on My Main Squeeze? Nice little New York bred.
Well, this is a little bit of a frustrating scenario. Jerry Brown, who's involved with the horse and with Windstar, and advises them on stock, and Jerry had told me early in the week that they were thinking of scratching and running in the Black Eyed Susan. And so I kind of had put her out of my mind. And, from a big basis, I mean, she absolutely was one of the ones, and I blew it here. I was nauseous that I left her off. I was really bad. This was awful. And I'll tell you, who was dreadful in here, the favorite, I got, that Venom and Pearls. I mean, she looked on paper like way the one to beat, and she stunk. She didn't get a call.
Yeah, totally agree. I used that one and was also disappointed. But again, nice look. When you have a New York bred like this, the options are kind of limitless, and it sounded like they'll stay in open company going forward, listening to Mike Maker after the race as well. Just wanted to also pull up one more, the La Troyenne, and take a look. Idiomatic, I thought, on the seasonal comebacker, looked very, very good. It looked at the top of the stretch like she may be coming up a little short, and then she came again and got it done. Idiomatic in the La Troyenne. Your thoughts with the Grade 1 win?
Well, how often do you get 2 champions? The 3-year-old champion and the older champion. This is sort of the kickoff to the good portion of the racing calendar. Between now and all the way to Breeders' Cup. So to have Pretty Mischievous and Idiomatic line up like this is pretty cool. And then, as I referred earlier to Chazzy Pommier, Carl DeVille's daughter, what she's done with Free Like a Girl is just unbelievable. And that's probably one of the more fun ownership groups. I mean, Chazzy and her dad are involved, as is one of the wildest Hot Springs characters, Jerry Caroom, and then Jerry Bruno, who a lot of people will know. Chuck Simon trained for Jerry Bruno, and had there's some other tie-ins to Jerry Bruno. They're having, just the greatest run. This mare, she's now run 39 times, and is now double, as they say, multiple Grade 1 plates, MG1P. The Apple Blossom last time, and now the La Troyenne. About as important a pair of Grade 1 filly and mare routes as there is. She's by L. Deal, and the Louisiana bred that is now worth, a fortune. And not to mention the fact that she picked up another $200,000. So she's made $1.6 million. She was a $5,000 yearling.
Gotta love that. You gotta love that. Steve, got to wrap it up, but we appreciate the visit. The boots on the ground from Churchill Downs. And we were talking before we went on the air, you're going to hang in Churchill for a couple of days for recaps, Kenny and Brian tomorrow and beyond, and then talk a little bit about the schedule going forward, because you came home for like 2 nights, and now it's another extended road trip.
Well, that was was home for 8 days. It felt like 2 days. We'll stay here through Tuesday, and we should have a lot of fun. Actually, I'm sure I'll get Cherie DeVoe, assuming she's staying put for a couple of nights. In fact, she just texted me. We'll get Cherie live, I expect. I'll probably get Steve Asmussen live as well, assuming he doesn't run down to Texas. And I'll have to go through my list and see who else will join me live. But then on Tuesday afternoon, we'll move our tack to Nashville, and we will come to you live from Percy Warner Park, the site of the next big Grade 1 on the jump circuit, the Iroquois. So looking forward to the Iroquois again this year. And then after we drop off Tina at the airport Sunday morning, I'll make the 10-hour drive from Nashville to Baltimore, and we'll come to you live from Old Hilltop. And really the last time from the building, the expectation that the building will come down, much the way Belmont's coming down. The building will probably come down after this. Though they will run, this is the 149th Preakness coming up. They will run the 2025 Preakness on the ground, but the building will probably be gone. So it'll be like a tent. Expectation is it'll be a tent city version of the Preakness next year because they don't want to run the 150th at Laurel.
Like Arlington Million after they had the fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, probably the last time in the building at Pimlico, which will be bittersweet. I love the place. And then we'll come home for the home game for Belmont at Saratoga, which is going to be crazy. And I'll broadcast all week from Belmont, from Saratoga, and we'll do Loose on the Lead from Belmont the morning after, and it's going to be unique. Yeah,
it's definitely going to be a lot of fun, and the excitement is just ramping up. It was high when it was first announced back in December, and it's just continuing to ramp up, certainly. But Steve, we appreciate the thoughts. Again, a great job the couple weeks leading up to the Derby. Be fun listening to you down in Nashville. Say hello to one or both of the Clancys if they're down. Sean now has regularly horses running at these big events, so he may be down there as an owner as well. And then we'll certainly be tuned in a couple of weeks for Preakness coverage as well.
Of course, he'll be down there.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I said. Say hello to those guys. So again, really appreciate it this morning, and we'll talk again, obviously.
It's my pleasure. I want to say hi to Tina, who's I think been watching the whole hour, which there's nice. only so much of me she can take. But I think she's hung in because she's been texting me.
Yeah, very good. We appreciate it. I'll say hello to Tina as well. Steve, take it easy. Drive safe.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Seth.
All right, Steve Byk again, live from Churchill Downs. Let's take a quick break. Take a break. I want to get my papers because I'm going to do the dark horse play of the day before I wrap it up today. So we'll just take a quick break, and then I'll come back for a minute, give our dark horse play of the day for Sunday afternoon. Stay tuned. Up a new account with $200 or more, bet $400 by the end of the month and receive a bonus $200 into your account. Plus, you can take advantage of everything an OTB account has to offer. Wagering from any device, live streaming, racing info, past performances, online promotions, and more. Sign up today and take advantage of the new account bonus. Details at capitalotb.com.
Come on.
I want sales reports on my desk by Monday.
Whoops. My bad.
Love racing? RTN brings you every live simulcast on your home television, plus live video streaming and race replays on your PC and mobile devices. To order, visit rtn.tv. RTN, a breed apart.
Birdstone is an outside front. They're coming down to the finish. Can Smarty Jones hold on? Here comes Birdstone. Birdstone surges past. Birdstone wins the Belmont Stakes. In front, but here comes High Chaparral. High Chaparral, the defending champ, to take it to Falbach. These two arch rivals head to head with Joe Hart bearing down on them. It's going to be a 3-horse photo finish to the turn. Here's the wire. Photo finish.
Welcome back to Racing Across America, the day after a really fun 2 days of racing. Hopefully everybody made a little money, had some fun. There were certainly some opportunities out there for everyone. And again, thanks to Steve Byk for jumping in. He was there for a couple of weeks and obviously there the last couple of days, filling us in with some of the live thoughts after a really fun couple of days down at Churchill, Oaks and Derby Day. Dark horse play of the day today. I'm going to look at Oaklawn, and just before I get to the play, do want to mention it's closing day at Oaklawn, and I just pulled up the stats. There will be no excitement as far as the trainer title. At the current Oaklawn meet, Steve Asmussen, 69 wins, Ken McPeak second with 29. So a mathematical impossibility to gain 40. But again, and I will say, Asmussen had 447 starters compared to 159 for Kenny McPeak. Robertino Diodoro, the ill-fated, sitting third. Brad Cox fourth. Chris Hartman fifth. Ron McKett sixth. But again, congratulations to Steve Asmussen on a nice meet. A lot of those ridden by his son, and I'm curious. I'm going to switch here and look at the jockey, see where his son is standing. Second, but the jockey title will not be a thrilling finish either. Christian Torres with 81, but Keith Asmussen second with 56. Francisco Arrieta third, Rafael Bejarano fourth, Manny Esquivel fifth, and Ricardo Santana sixth. So again, Christian Torres, Steve Asmussen, congratulations. They will be the winners of the trainer and jock titles at this current Oaklawn meet. They wrap up today. It'll wrap up at our time at about 6:45 this evening. 5:45 local their time with a 1 3/4. And I thought we'd jump in and make this the dark horse play of the day. And again, our friends at the Dark Horse Mercantile and Impressions of Saratoga, just down the street, Broadway in Saratoga, have jumped on during the Triple Crown season for some sponsorship. And that means dark horse play of the day. And again, a highly tout swinging by both the Dark Horse Mercantile and Impressions of Saratoga. And again, they're about 2 blocks apart, opposite sides of Broadway. But if you're in downtown, stop by. I guarantee you're going to have fun. They're just the kind of stores you can go in and browse around, and you'll find something you like, believe me. Dark Horse Mercantile and Impressions of Saratoga sponsoring the Dark Horse Play of the Day. And again, today it's race 11 at Oaklawn. 1 3/4. This is a traditional end, and I think it is. In fact, it doesn't have a title on the page in the racing form. It's just a starter allowance, but I think it is titled The End of the Trail. Last race of the meet, 1 3/4. And being a starter allowance, I looked and I found a horse that I thought classed up nicely if you went down the page with this bunch. Obviously, the trip is going to be the big question mark. And there's 1 or 2 in here that have done some marathonish. Rungius, if I pronounce that correctly, comes out of a 1 3/8 trip. So that one's got a little experience going this kind of a distance. I'm going to go with number 1, Big Paper. As I say, Tom Van Berg horse, I think classes up nicely, comes out of a win in a starter allowance back on March 8th. It was on 1 1/16. This is a different animal, as it were, going to this 1 3/4. But I thought off of that effort, and again, I thought you'd go down the page, and this horse may just be a little bit more classy in this starter allowance, at this bottomish starter allowance level than some of the others. The aforementioned Steve Asmussen with his son Keith have Royal Act. I looked at maybe making that one the dark horse play of the day at 12-1. I think there's a little class on this horse as well, but I'm going to tilt towards the number 1. So again, dark horse play of the day for this Sunday afternoon. Oaklawn Park, race 11, horse number 1, Big Paper. And again, thanks to our friends at the Dark Horse Mercantile and Impressions of Saratoga for sponsoring the dark horse play of the day. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. We're going to have some fun today. Saratoga Harness, as usual, on a Sunday afternoon. Belmont at Aqueduct will be in the mix as well. Some Oaklawn and beyond. I'm going to look at Oaklawn and Aqueduct this afternoon. And again, hopefully everybody's flush with Oaks and Derby money, and we can all multiply that up this afternoon. That's certainly going to be the game plan. I want to thank our friends at Woodbine for their sponsorship of this and some of the other programming and events here at Capital OTB. Again, we will make a late season trip up to Oaklawn a little bit later this year, but we appreciate their sponsorship. Woodbine, pick, bet, and cheer. Great racing north of the border, thanks to Woodbine. We'll wrap it up now. Seth Merrow in the studio. Really appreciate your tuning in. So stay tuned. Be back in about an hour and a half or so to kick off OTB Live for a Sunday afternoon. We'll see you then.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting. You're watching